Good day, Merry Christmas, or winter solstice or of the year, whatever your preferred belief is. It is the end of the year. It's always just this, there's seasons to life. There is the season in the north hemisphere to the darkness. In the southern hemisphere, happy summer solstice. Today we have several things. One is, well, we know what happened with. Well, one is going to be Starbucks. Some celebrations of some of the wins of the year, even though it's been a really tough year, ending on quote a negative point, but it's basically a setup by Mansion so he can come back and be the hero later. But we're going to put a kibosh on that. And some other good news. So let's begin. That Starbucks store in the north, you're like a lone outpost, a beacon of hope. So far, you have looked at. If I haven't looked on Reddit, I'm just going to assume that you have, and if you haven't, well, that's nothing I can do about that. But I'm going to continue on just as for the record. So, if there are other smaller corporate-owned types that have a roadmap, but I'm assuming that you are doing so. So now that you've looked at what you want and what you believe and what you love about Starbucks, what you hate about Starbucks, we're gonna look. You're gonna look now at go through the history and go, okay, what union busting activities have done, even the worst. Would they from poisoning your dog or whatever? Same thing. 10 things that you think they're gonna do, and then once you have that over Christmas, because it's busy, it's something probably you can want to do at the beginning, kind of think about it, and then we'll come back to it next week on Tuesday, probably after Christmas. We'll then look at creating a structured strategy to be able to work towards getting that contract because they're going to try everything in their power to break up the small little store. And they're going to, and understanding that going in, but you have a good moral position, especially since they have, corporate has been going against the brand promise. So write down everything, the negative, but do it after Christmas. But just to kind of have it in the back of your mind, because that way you knowing once Christmas comes to light, positive things are coming. It's going to be a little hard. It's going to be a lot of hard work, but if you keep at it, it can be done. So let's go with the good news. The good news is McConnell has shown his hand. Every time McConnell, we know McConnell's structured his tactics. Now, anytime there's positive news or a positive can be brought out, that's when McConnell will put his finger on the quietly make a small statement or something. Put his finger on the on the scale, and that's how he operates. But once you now that you know this, you can counter these operations and actually also set them up, which is what we'll be doing for the next year. He has stated that okay, he's glad that Cinema by her lobbyist will not do anything against the filibuster, which then tells us that he knows the filibuster has been broken and that he actually uses it as a weapon to gum up the works, create dysfunction. He's already said that, but now we know that's one of his main leverage points. Since we now know that's one of his main leverage points, we know breaking that leverage point breaks him. So the filibuster has to be reformed to the talking filibuster, and you will see Mitch McConnell's power erode. The other good news is because of his in the game of power, he's wooing Joe Manchin, right? So Joe will probably jump ship if he doesn't get his demands by the co-lobbyist, if he thinks the Democrats will lose the Senate and the House next cycle. And you can already see Fox News and the right wing anger machine hammering the amygdala. I had just had a fun argument with a person who I know personally, and I've watched her over the years get worse and worse and worse. I called it hype marketing, where they just constantly keep hammering you. I learned that when I was first learning how to do what is it, affiliate marketing, which is really difficult actually. But in learning that, I was finding myself getting in this anger loop, and I was already angry coming out of the military for the situations that had gone through. But I was like, that's not who I am. I'm not a person who's always angry. That's just silly. And it also blinds you to being able to think. So you start to defend your anger as opposed to looking at things objectively and understanding the subjective nature of what you're looking at. And, and you don't use the logical tools at your disposal that you learn. Uh, you were like, in my case, actual pure logic. And so looking at it, I started to back away from those things, and started to take a higher level look at seeing how these emotion sets are being used against people. And also, as I started studying cluster B, it became pretty apparent that this is the cluster B type structure in marketing to keep people angry or keep hammering them, the never ending, constant. And it wasn't what I wanted to do, and it's not the type of business I wanted, and that's how comes I came up with brand response. It still uses some of the processes, but um, it doesn't it's not so toxic. It's not toxic at all. It creates a better sense of positivity throughout the whole business, and that's what's so powerful about it. And that's why narcissists and people with cluster B type actually usually fight against it, or they try to change it. That's what they kind of did and do it in Starbucks. Is now they actually, where you have the slack movement of your time slot is never the same. It's always moving and all that. It keeps you off balance. You can't get another job. Things like that. That's very much psychopathic cluster B type thinking strategies. But anyways, where I was talking about with McConnell, from a position of power, by saying he's actively wooing Manchin, what he has Manchin has been in the Democratic Party, even though he's a Dixiecrat, to the point where he's built up enough power within the Democratic Party. If Manchin jumps ship, he loses his power. So Manchin is actually, from a position of power, is in a weaker position than he was before. Coming into the next year, and then even if he's jumped ship to the next Congress after 22, the only thing that say the Senate is won by the Republicans and everything dies. The only thing that can be Manchin right now is on the head of the Energy Committee. Committee assignments were the main power brokers happen because and especially the head, because you bring to forth onto the floor what into the committee what will be spoken about or debated about. Manchin will lose that power. And even if McConnell gives him that power and says, okay, you're going to be front of the line over all of these Republicans, McConnell then loses his power within the Republican caucus. So Manchin loses his power no matter which way he goes. So I'd like to thank McConnell for tipping his hand. Now you have Kyrsten Sinema. Kyrsten Sinema, same thing. She's basically a right wing plan, center right. And the thing is, we did state, yeah, we understood because big business knows, and they were trying to see that they had the momentum before, whatever, before it was broken apart. We still have the momentum. Big business is doing ad hominem, i.e., attacking the persons, as we've seen over the last year, even with Kathleen Kennedy. Uh, that's what I'm going to get to at the end of the year. Lessons learned. It's going to be awesome. Can't wait to do that one because a lot of the things that we have gone over the last year are tactics that are fairly universal and can be seen. And once you now know them, they don't work, or they don't work as effectively once you have the framework of their thinking. But that's the end of the year thing we'll do next week. But it's continuing. So Cinema is in a weakened position because of the exact same thing. Before McConnell, before Manchin and Cinema, what they was, oh, we're co-sponsors on Bill's AI. The new would never get to the floor, so they can say, look, we're with you, or whatever. But now we know who they are, and now they can be maneuvered. Now you know who your opponent is. And once you have an understanding of who your opponent is, they can't go back. So this is actually a good thing for next year. So we know about the filibuster, turn it into a talking filibuster like the old timers used to have it, but with them forcing them to hold the floor. Because if they have a true moral dislike of something, or they truly dislike it as moral, then they can hold the floor. Now, Mitch McConnell, the next thing he'll say is, well, the Republicans will use it against the Democrats. Yeah, probably will. But in that case, it will also show the average American person, you're bringing this to the floor, this is what we have the objections to. And it will make for great political theater. And I'm pretty darn sure a lot of the things that they were going to try to ram through from a small business and an average person business, even a medium-sized business, most Americans are going to look at that and look at what they're going to try to ram through as like what the Republicans would try to ram through. The modern Republicans, robber barons, are going to go, this is crap. This is horrible for us. Right now, due to the propaganda of the very right-wing propaganda sites, they got the anger and the fear and stuff rolling up. If you feel yourself being angry and fearful, stop and go, okay, why am I angry and fearful? And what would be the opposite emotion, and what would I think would be the opposite thing, not from what they're saying, but where I'm at. So if you're saying, oh, it's bad, then you would say, okay, why is it bad? And then, well, this is what they say. Well, let's look at it, okay, and then say, okay, this is bad. From they being say, if you're a Republican, you're going, this is how I do it. I look at it and go, this is horrible. It's going to create inflation. Let's look at the BBB. It's going to create inflation. Okay. The BBB, and then the left side, it doesn't create inflation. Okay. So let's look at it as, what is inflation? Is prices are going to go up. We do feel that prices are going up. What's the counter argument? In my understanding, because I definitely look at the finance differently, it's supply chain issue. Okay, well, BBB is 10 years. Will the supply chain issue be here for 10 years? Do we think inflation is going to last 10 years? Probably not. So it's mitigated. So that tells me if it's short term, they have to keep me angry. In the short term, anger is only designed to be a short term situation. If you're supposed to be angry, get out of your fight, get back in the chill mode. And if they look at something and then they try to keep me angry again, then I go, okay, that's manipulation. That's not, because there should be anger and soothe, And if they actually do that, they give you an anger and then they soothe you by making you come back to watch the thing, to watch their channel. So they're the ones who create the anger, and then they also create the soothing, and that's how the brainwashing works. And that's so they're the source of your anger, and they're the source of your soothing, which is pretty sad. But if you look at it and go, okay, if you're giving me the anger, you should not be the first source of soothing. So let's go see how the other side would soothe me. And you can objectively look at things and go, but one of the things they do is they also try to make you angry even at trying to be soothed by the other statement, which is quite diabolical. That's how people get caught in codependent systems. The person who makes them angry is also the person who is the only one that's allowed to soothe them, and turn on the parasympathetic nervous system. If you're getting that, if your pain and pleasure is coming from the same source, and it only can come from that same source, then that is a brainwashing technique. And they're going to try to keep you angry. So if somebody's trying to, if I only am angry, or if my anger originates and it's considered external, and they're saying it, and your anger's out external, then you're being brainwashed. It's hard balancing that, especially if you're in your early 20s as your mind's still forming, and then you see older persons who are metastasizing their understanding. It's even harder for them because that means they have to do more introspection with longer chain patterns. It's fairly diabolical as I've worked my way through the structure of how they do this. But except, so we gotta, watching celebrate the victories. As I said, we have 75 executive orders to try to undo some of the bad, terrible things, very fascist things that were done with not 45. We still can get voting rights. Voting rights is the most important thing to be done, and it has to be done because if it is not done, gerrymandering is going to take away millions and millions and millions of people's votes, and it's going to create more cynicism, which takes away even more people's votes. And if they do this, we still have to get out in 2022 to stop this march towards fascism. And fascism gets people to do horrible things, thinking you saw on January 6th, they were saving the country, but how many of those people actually read the Constitution? How many of those people actually understand what they were doing was wrong? Most of them thought they were doing what was right. That's fascism. That's how bigots and everything work. You know, speaking of which, we now know that Joe Manchin's a bigot, and the coal union is not supporting his play anymore. That's only one of the good things that came out of this year. People now understand how they're manipulated through racism, or more precisely, racism and bigotry, where the bigots get people who are proud, who are open-minded, to be angry and hateful, so that way they can steal the money from them. But now we understand the structure of it, which is something we'll go into next week. So we do have some wins where it's kind of deflating, and Manchin's going to say, well, next year, if basically, he's going to be the one who soothes. He created the pain, so he's going to say, well, I'm the one who can fix that pain. He's going to do the same thing that Trump does. Pain pleasure dichotomy, him and cinema. Personally, they need to be punished because they did not go into these, which is something we've said from the very beginning. They did not go into negotiations in good faith. His whole thing was to tank anything that helped people, anything that actually moved the country forward to keep us competitive. And then they throw in excuses. Well, China, they're winning, which is so counter-American. Usually it's like, okay, you're winning for now. This is the work of really incompetent people. And yeah, they may have made millions, whatever, and billions, but they're incompetent because they can't compete. They, they've gotten too comfortable, and in that comfort, they become soft. And so then they have to be mean to prove that they're not soft, when the reality is they're soft because they can't compete. The other thing, the people that were hurt with this non-passage, besides the child tax credit, we're still waiting on veterans benefits that are in this because the VA is falling apart. As always, they thanks for your service, but we're not going to help you after you get out. That's a bunch of BS. McConnell gets millions of dollars because of Fort Knox's in Kentucky, but one of the per capita GDP, but they're one of the poorest states as per person, so he keeps them poor on purpose. And we still haven't got anything back as far as is his wife a Chinese spy, oblique Chinese spy, because it's more of a cultural thing. Because one of the uh, white nationalist thing is the whole they got an Asian, like, ooh, I got an Asian woman. It's kind of pathetic actually, but it's more about they're still in control. So it's quite odd. And so as I said, it's good news. Um, got the judges, got the executive actions. We have a fight for next year to save this country. Because the greatest fear of the fascists and the theocrats is we break the majority, we get two more, and we then are able to get things passed. Second thing that's reminded me as I was looking about that, it's kind of when you went and it's there but not there. You definitely work out more. Oh yeah, that McConnell's worried about the January 6th commission because he knows what I said, that the way the Constitution is put into place, if it is shown through the January 6th commission, which is why he was trying to block it, because he knows he was protecting his members because he put his party over country. It is shown that there were members who were part of the attempted coup. Congress has to move to remove those members from its body, which would also probably include him. And I'm pretty sure there are at least 3 or 4 senators who were actively involved in the January 6th. Once they are removed from Congress via impeachment, the legislation can go through. And if he tries to protect Trump, then he is in contempt of Congress, in contempt of the Constitution. I'm pretty sure he knows. And so you'll hear the Fox News getting louder and louder and louder and louder and louder. And knowing that when the louder they get, you know that more that we're getting closer. Because screaming is their main thing. I can actually I wasn't gonna embarrass this person, but hell, let's put it on a. They know I'm being watched, so arguing with me was kind of stupid. Yeah. Whoops. This is my argument. And, see the laughter. Now that sadness is me. I was like, I sit there. But this is what it was. Yeah, what she's saying. But that was, as you know, that's a lie. The inflation that they're talking about is done from the supply chain issues. Two, everything that's done is always a lag of 2 to 3 years. So the present president has to undo the purposeful mess of what Trump was going to do, which because he kept the Fed kept pumping money, disconnecting disconnecting Wall Street from Main Street, and anytime they tried to reconnect Wall Street to Main Street, Trump kept pumping it up. So now it's unsustainable. So as money has to be flowing out of Wall Street back into Main Street, what they were going to do is just pull the plug, let Main Street just take the hit, and then once all the asset prices had been bought down, had been hammered, then buy up the assets and then roll the price back up again. By doing what Biden's doing, it's counteracting that narrative that Trump was going to do, and then he was going to blame it on the Democrats. That was the plan. That was Trump's plan for the second term. As you can see the setups, and you can see how they did it psychologically with the constituency. So that's where we're at. I have, mind you, as I've said personally, it's always been about the reset. I am pro business, but I am not pro big business. And there was this another thing I wanted to show. This is he's talking about having TBI. It's a great interview. But this is more another thing that needs to be shown as far as this is a page is this I remember. I don't have any. Classical Republicanism and the American Revolution. It was an excellent read. But the one point I want to point out here is this duopoly or dialectic. Tories connect to aristocracies, right, and serviles, certain people who expect people to have servants, to be servile to them, and it's the question between republicanism and monarchy, and the monarchy is the right. The monarchy is persons who live off of collection of rents. And I don't believe a lot of persons who are, quote, Republican understand that. Understand that they are working for the persons who view themselves as their betters. And they definitely don't have the understanding of that, of the way of thinking. That I can tell you for fact, just by how I think. And it drives people crazy finding out of my heritage, my lineage. It tears them apart. They hate it. You could see within the way in the meme where women are like I was watching that one video. It was like, oh, that her husband is an actual rocket scientist, and she was saying, "Well, it doesn't impress me much." Well, actually, the whole Shania Twain song was saying, "Doesn't impress me much." Well, actually, it does impress her, but she's trying to play hard to get, or trying not to show that it does. And then by saying that in the meme set, and then seeing behaviors of the way some women are acting, it bothers them because they can no longer. The whole thing is people who are bigots know that bigotry has nothing to do with bigotry is basically an excuse to be shitty persons, shitty human beings. You know, it's the same thing. This person has this great little shop, but they're doing all the passive aggressive things. The one chick's younger chick's passive aggressive. The owner's passive aggressive, and it's all, and then you have this kid at the gas station next to her. Oh, kindly he goes, yeah, I was gonna picking up something, and I didn't bring my credit card or something or other, and so let me borrow $8. But everything he was saying was like, oh, well, just pass it forward. But he was being angry at it. So I'm just been sitting back waiting because I'm gonna give him back the money with interest, and he's gonna say, oh, I don't want it, and I'm like, I don't want. You're supposed to forward it, and I'm like, no, I'm not giving my positive energy to others coming through you. And so these are little digs of how, remember, because people who are narcissistic or cluster B are externalizers. So I have to give that money back, give it back with interest, and he's gonna. I guarantee you, he's already gonna be pissed when the money comes back to him because he was setting up a whole thing of me never paying him, even though he said, "Oh, just pay it forward." Because, but the thing, since his emotion state was in this angry thing, he ends up showing his cards. It's quite sad, actually. And especially since they always view themselves as above when their behavior pretty much is more animalistic and less humanistic. Which leads me to Lady Markle. Right now, Lady Markle uh, is being surrounded by Hollywood. Hollywood has shown Lady Markle believes everything I do is all just from watching the videos. She does not understand the true nature of the macro thought. She does not understand the true nature of a higher thinking self. And she definitely doesn't understand the crown. Princess Anne, Queen Elizabeth II's daughter, definitely was in, you know, because of all the crap she was taking, definitely said you need to step away from this. And then I could totally understand, and I believe that's awesome, as far as helping out her sister-in-law, her daughter, her nephew. However, because Lady Markle always runs, and it is a part of cultural situations, it's the same thing that of her personality, and does not understand the comportment necessary to be a royal. A lot of British persons just viewed her as a gold digger, and then she leaves, taking their most beloved prince away from them. Of course, they're going to hate her. And now here's an opportunity to say, okay, let me learn. The queen saw now things are different, understands, oh, you were being attacked. This has been, okay. Now she still won't. Now she's going to be in transition. Now she's going to be a child. Even so, doing something as simple as just going and learning the art. But one of the main things is she's afraid because it's all about control and fear. She's afraid to leave Harry. Well, the thing is, she needs to be able to leave and go do her own thing away from her husband for a long period of time, and also learn the structures and comportments because she's in the Game of Thrones, and then she's acting like she's playing just regular old, well, things. No, regular old living out in the suburbs. She does not really truly understand everything she does has global implications. And her running actually hurts millions of people. And she's going to say, well, I don't care. Well, or I'll make it up with it. No, the crown will cut her off. Because right now she's being surrounded by Hollywood because they want to make themselves gatekeepers to Harry, which puts the crown in jeopardy. And the crown will cut Harry off. Secondly, the women that are surrounding her are actually setting her up for failure because as she stays in fear, she attacks Harry. As she attacks Harry, now Harry will look for soothing away from her, which will destroy her marriage. And then the crown will just completely, she will not have her kid if she divorces Harry. Or tries to. Everything she does is running. She has not made good with her dad, which is a very important thing for women. We've seen this with the vice president, but I can also understand a lot about the vice president because being Jamaican tends not to say much. You don't get much information. It's not just happy-go-lucky, lovey thing, especially from Jamaican men of that age. So I understand the vice president in that manner. However, she does need to talk to her dad and understand where she comes from because she does not really understand. And two, right now the Hall is upset with me, but they don't understand once you look at the Prince Hall. It's understandable, but they still, like, it's been corrupted from my perspective. And because also, it's still a good thing. I still think Prince Hall is a very good thing, but there's always been this split with because of bigotry and racism in America between Prince Hall and the non Prince Hall Masons. And hopefully that slowly it's being worn down. But persons like McConnell want to keep that because segregation gives them power. Without segregation, they don't have power. Because if you were to look at meet a person and go, oh, there's just a normal person, they can't externalize their hatred and their crap. And you might say, well, does it have to do anything? Well, it's all, it's all one percenter games. That's the other thing Lady Markle does not understand is this is dealing in a 0.001% game. And this is the Game of Thrones, and she's trying to play the Game of Thrones. She's like, she doesn't get it. And Hollywood's is trying to separate her from her husband. And she doesn't realize it. She's being outmaneuvered. She will Harry cheat. She's out 6 to 8 weeks learning how to be at least understanding of being a royal. Even if she does not, even if she, quote, does not go back, as long as she's holding the Duchess title, she's still somewhat of a royal. She has to know how to comport, has to understand what's going on. The other thing that Hollywood and the financiers are trying to do is, so Harry needs to learn from, I said Ron LeGrand because he's taught most of the people out there. And that was something I figured out by listening and working my way backwards from all the gurus. The reason they don't want him to learn from Ron LeGrand is because then he would learn from somebody who understands both being poor and being wealthy. The zero to the top. And then, and even though he's very right wing, but he got played by Trump. And he knows it, and it's hard, and it's hard watching and hard listening to him realize that, yeah, and Trump did that to him on purpose to slow him down. That's the part that really irks me. And now, from a purely, if you just want purely politics, that gives him back, gives Harry back the working man's cred. So now, as all these bajillionaires, you saw how the dude Barstool Sports was all pissed off because he was looking to get his claws into Harry, and then work his way up to the royals. But the crown will protect itself, and he was pissed. So you're seeing all these people swirling around Harry and they will just rip him apart, steal everything, because they will be the gatekeeper. Well, this way, it gives what I'm doing is because if if others are the gatekeepers to the royal network, they can't be part of the network anymore. It is the exact opposite. He is the gatekeeper to the royal network, not them be gatekeeping to the network. So they're just trying to, and Lady Markle, with her fears, is being destroyed, and she doesn't even see it. And because she was so afraid, she cannot be raised to the point where she can see it. And so they're attacking me, and they're trying to keep that knowledge out of, and then out of Harry's mind. And so even if Harry does get it, they're trying to still then use, because there is a rhythm difference, there is a thinking difference in LA that's extremely toxic. It's even toxic up in San Francisco, but it's actually nowhere as near as toxic. San Francisco is actually pretty cool. It's always been called 11 square miles surrounded by reality. San Francisco, Silicon Valley kind of area. So moving up to San Francisco still keeps that area, still keeps that thinking, or Silicon Valley. Now you're looking at the venture capital area, and it gets it away from Hollywood because Hollywood is toxic right now. That's for what he wants to do, for what the crown is asking of him to do. Which is working on this climate change, both from an entrepreneurial perspective, so he now learns the American entrepreneurial, brings that into the royal understanding, which increases the strength of the royal family, but also lets them understand republicanism even more so with a better fingertip feel. Because remember, England is a constitutional monarchy. All of these things I thought of, and I might do small things that make seemingly little sense, but those small things have great consequences, and they ripple. This is the difference between, this is how one must think. And this is what Lady Markle does not understand in her thinking. And Princess Anne, what she also doesn't realize, even though she left, quote, the family, she's always and her daughters still have the protection of the crown. If Hollywood and all these others start swirling around Harry and thinking that they're going to be the deal makers and tell the crown what to do, the crown will cut them off. And then Markle will do the American thing. Well, I didn't need you, da 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 da, and acting very, very plebeian, very Servian, like a petulant child, which puts the crown, which means Britain, in danger. And the crown will cut her off, and Harry off. Because everything, as a duchess, is a matter of state. She can't get that through her head. So anyways, this has been a very long one. I wish everyone a Merry Christmas. And next week, look out for a year in review because it has been one heck of a year. We know. I wish your families a happy Merry Christmas or dark time of the year, Kwanzaa, or whatever it is that Hanukkah, past Hanukkah, whatever that your time and the end of the year time is. But it is a time for reflection and looking forward, but enjoying the moments that we've had. So, Merry Christmas from me to you and your family, and I wish you well.